Some men believe they're smarter than the women who love them. My husband was one of those men, and for exactly 3 years he was right. Until he wasn't. My name is Sarah. I was 36 years old when I finally understood that the confidence in my husband's eyes wasn't love. It was arrogance. The kind of arrogance that comes from believing you've gotten away with something for so long that you've stopped worrying about being caught. I met Michael when I was 27 at a friend's engagement party. He was funny, ambitious, the kind of man who filled a room the moment he walked in. He worked as a financial consultant, moving between clients across the state, always sharp in a suit, always confident in a way that made people trust him instantly. We got married 2 years later. Our wedding was small but beautiful, close family, a handful of friends, a promise made in front of the people who mattered most to us. I remember standing at that altar thinking I had found someone who would never let me down. That's the cruel irony of trust. It feels the strongest right before it's tested the hardest. For the first 4 years of our marriage, everything felt solid. We bought a house together. We talked about starting a family. Michael's career grew steadily, and with it, his travel schedule. Client meetings in other cities, weekend conferences, late nights closing deals over dinner. I never questioned any of it because why would I? This was the life we had built together, brick by brick, and I trusted every piece of it completely. But somewhere around year 5, something in Michael began to change, not dramatically, not in a way anyone watching from the outside would have noticed. It was subtler than that, the way his phone started staying closer to him at all times, the way certain business trips required him to keep his phone off for privacy reasons he'd never mentioned before, the way he started showering the moment he walked through the door before even saying hello properly. Small things, things easy to explain away. Things I did explain away over and over again because the alternative, actually considering that my husband might be lying to me, felt unbearable. Michael was careful. I want to be clear about that because this isn't a story about a sloppy man who got caught by accident. This is a story about a man who spent 3 years building an incredibly precise system of deception, separate phones, cash withdrawals instead of card payments, carefully rehearsed stories that never quite contradicted each other. He thought he had thought of everything. He hadn't thought of one thing, that the woman he was betraying wasn't just trusting, she was patient. And patient people, once they finally start paying attention, notice things that careless liars never expect anyone to notice. It began with a receipt, a small, insignificant piece of paper that fell out of his jacket pocket while I was doing laundry one Sunday afternoon. A dinner receipt for two, from a restaurant in a city Michael had told me he'd visited alone for a solo client meeting the week before. I stood there in the laundry room, holding that receipt, feeling something shift inside me that I couldn't yet name. I didn't confront him that day. Instead, I did something far more powerful. I decided to pay attention, really pay attention, for the first time in years. Once you start looking for cracks in something you've trusted completely, you begin to see them everywhere. That's exactly what happened to me over the following 2 months. I began noticing the exact days Michael's extra travel happened, always the second and fourth week of the month, almost like clockwork. I noticed that on those specific weeks, he would leave his laptop bag zipped differently than usual, a small detail most people would never register. But after 17 years together, I knew the difference between packed in a hurry and packed to hide something. I noticed he'd started working out more, not unusual on its own, but paired with a new cologne he'd never worn before our marriage, a haircut style he suddenly preferred, small physical changes that individually meant nothing. Together, they painted a picture I didn't want to see but couldn't stop seeing. I want to pause here and say something important. I'm not someone who believes in snooping through a partner's phone out of insecurity. For years, I gave Michael complete privacy because I believed privacy and trust were the same thing. But somewhere in those 2 months of quiet observation, I understood something different. Privacy is a gift you give someone who has earned it. And Michael, I was beginning to suspect, hadn't earned it in a very long time. The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening in March. Michael had told me he was staying late at the office to finish a client proposal, expecting to be home around 9 p.m. Around 7:30, I received a call from his assistant, Jennifer, asking a simple, innocent question, whether Michael had left his charger at home since he'd mentioned needing it for an early flight the next morning. I told her I'd check, but something about that call struck me immediately. Michael hadn't mentioned any flight to me, and more importantly, according to Jennifer, Michael had left the office at 5 p.m. that day, not staying late at all. I sat with that information for a long moment before deciding what to do next. Instead of confronting him immediately, I did something that surprised even myself. I called a close friend of mine, Rachel, who worked as a private investigator on a freelance basis, mostly handling insurance fraud cases for a local firm. I explained the situation to her carefully, and she agreed to help me understand what was really happening, not out of drama, but simply because I deserved clarity before making any decisions about my own life. Over the next 3 weeks, Rachel helped me piece together a picture Michael never imagined anyone would ever see clearly. There was another woman, her name was Denise, a marketing coordinator who worked for one of Michael's regular clients. They had been seeing each other for just over a year, meeting during his extended business trips, staying at hotels under Michael's name while somehow keeping the charges separate from our shared accounts through a secondary credit card I never knew existed. The most painful part wasn't even the affair itself. It was learning that Denise believed Michael was already separated from me, that he had told her our marriage had ended months ago, and that he was simply waiting for the right time to finalize the divorce, all while continuing to sleep beside me every single night, still calling me his wife in front of our families, still accepting every ounce of support and love I gave him without hesitation. Michael hadn't just been unfaithful. He had built an entire alternate narrative of his own life, one where I had already been erased from the story, long before I even knew a new chapter had begun. Rachel handed me a folder one evening: photos, hotel confirmations, message screenshots Denise had unknowingly helped confirm through a mutual industry contact who recognized Michael's name during casual conversation. Everything I needed to understand, undeniably, exactly who my husband had become over the past 3 years. I sat alone in my car that night, staring at that folder for nearly an hour before I finally opened the car door and drove home. Michael was in the kitchen when I walked in, casually pouring himself a glass of wine, completely unaware that the folder sitting in my bag contained enough truth to end everything he had so carefully built. "Hey, how was your day?" he asked, smiling at me the way he'd smiled at me for 17 years. I smiled back and said, "It was very informative, actually." He had no idea what that sentence really meant, but I did. And from that moment forward, every decision I made was deliberate, calculated, and completely under my control. I want to explain something about the weeks that followed, because I know some people might wonder why I didn't confront Michael the very night I confirmed everything. The truth is, confrontation in private would have given him exactly what he wanted: control over the story. Michael was a master of narrative. In his career, his entire job revolved around convincing clients to trust him, to believe his version of events, to see him as reliable and honest even when circumstances suggested otherwise. If I had confronted him privately, I knew exactly what would happen. He would apologize just enough to seem remorseful, blame stress, or a moment of weakness, promise it meant nothing, and slowly, carefully begin rebuilding his image in my eyes exactly the way he had rebuilt it with every client who ever doubted him. I refused to let that happen. Instead, I decided I would give Michael exactly what he thought: he had: more time, more trust, more rope. Because a man who believes he's gotten away with something rarely changes his behavior. He simply becomes more confident. And confidence, I learned, makes people careless in the most useful ways. Over the following 6 weeks, I continued living exactly as I always had. I packed his bags for business trips. I asked about his meetings with genuine-sounding interest. I even, on 2 occasions, spoke briefly with Denise's name coming up in conversation without flinching, without giving Michael any indication that I knew anything at all. Meanwhile, Rachel and I continued building a complete, undeniable record. We confirmed dates. We verified hotel stays. We even discovered that Michael had been quietly moving money into a separate account over the past 8 months. Money meant, we later understood, to fund an eventual apartment for himself and Denise once he felt the timing was right to leave me. He was planning his exit, carefully, patiently, just like he had planned everything else. What Michael never understood was that I was planning something too. I decided early on that I didn't want a quiet, private ending to this marriage. Not because I wanted to humiliate him for the sake of humiliation, but because I understood something important. Michael's entire identity was built on being seen as trustworthy, reliable, respected. His professional reputation depended on people believing in his integrity. And if he was willing to build his personal life on a foundation of lies this deep, I believed the people who trusted him, his colleagues, his clients, his own family, deserved to see clearly who he actually was. The perfect opportunity arrived through Michael's own ambition. His company was hosting a major client appreciation gala, an event where Michael was set to be honored with a prestigious Trusted Advisor Award, recognizing his 17 years of exceptional client relationships and financial guidance. The irony wasn't lost on me. A man about to be celebrated publicly for trustworthiness while privately building an entire secret life on betrayal. Over 200 guests were expected to attend: clients, colleagues, executives from partner firms, and several close family members, including Michael's parents and his younger sister, who had always looked up to him deeply. I spent the final 2 weeks before the gala preparing everything meticulously. I organized every piece of evidence into a clear, simple presentation, nothing exaggerated, nothing dramatized, just dates, verified facts, and undeniable proof. I decided exactly what I would say, keeping my words calm, measured, and completely free of the anger that would have been so easy to lean into. The night before the gala, Michael tried on his new suit in front of the mirror, visibly excited about the recognition he was about to receive. He turned to me and said, "17 years of hard work finally paying off. I couldn't have built any of this without you by my side, Sarah." I looked at him and said quietly, "You have no idea how true that is." He smiled, assuming it was affection. He had no idea it was the calm before the storm he never saw coming. The gala was held in a grand ballroom downtown, elegantly decorated with soft gold lighting and tall floral centerpieces. Over 200 guests filled the room, men in tailored suits, women in elegant gowns, the kind of polished, professional crowd that represented everything Michael had worked to build his reputation within. Michael's parents arrived early, beaming with pride. His mother hugged me tightly and said, "We are so proud of him, Sarah, and so proud of you too for standing beside him through everything." I hugged her back, knowing that within hours, standing beside him would take on an entirely different meaning than she expected. Throughout the evening, Michael moved through the crowd with practiced confidence, shaking hands, laughing at the right moments, accepting early congratulations from colleagues who already knew about his upcoming award. I watched him from across the room, seeing clearly, perhaps for the first time, exactly how skilled he was at performing sincerity. Around 8:45 p.m., the formal awards program began. Several categories were announced before the evening's main honor. Finally, the host stepped up to the podium. "And now for this year's Trusted Advisor Award, recognizing 17 years of exceptional integrity and client dedication. Please join me in congratulating Michael." The room erupted in warm applause. Michael stood, adjusted his jacket, and walked toward the stage with the same confident stride he'd used to walk into every room for the past 17 years, believing completely in his own carefully constructed image. He accepted the award, thanked his firm, thanked his clients for their continued trust, and then turned toward where I was seated. "And most importantly," he said, his voice warm and sincere sounding, "I want to thank my wife, Sarah, whose trust and support has meant everything to me throughout this journey." The room turned toward me, smiling, ready to applaud warmly. I stood, smoothed my dress, and walked toward the stage. Michael smiled at me, offering the microphone, assuming I was joining him for a proud, sentimental moment in front of his colleagues and family. He had no idea that the phrase trust and support was about to become the exact phrase that ended everything he had built. I took the microphone gently from his hand. "Thank you, Michael," I began, my voice steady and calm. "You're right, my trust and support have meant a great deal to this marriage, which is why I think everyone here deserves to understand exactly what that trust has actually looked like over the past 3 years." I saw his confident smile falter instantly, his eyes widening with a flicker of panic he couldn't quite hide. "Sarah," he said quietly, stepping toward me, "let's talk about this later, not here." "I think now is exactly the right time," I said gently but firmly, holding the microphone steady. "This award is about trust and integrity. I believe the people honoring you tonight deserve the full picture before they finish applauding." I connected my phone to the venue's presentation screen, arranged earlier that day under the pretense of a surprise congratulatory video, coordinated quietly with the event planner who had no idea what content I actually intended to share. The screen lit up, a hotel confirmation under Michael's name dated just 3 weeks earlier, a photo of Michael and Denise together unmistakable at a restaurant Michael had claimed was a solo client dinner. A bank statement showing the secondary account, the quiet transfers, the money set aside for an apartment I was never meant to know about. The room fell into stunned, heavy silence. I looked out at the crowd. I saw Michael's mother's hand rise slowly to cover her mouth. I saw his sister's face shift from confusion to horror. I saw colleagues exchanging shocked, uncomfortable glances. And I saw Michael standing frozen on that stage, the trusted advisor award still in his hand, his face completely drained of color. "For 3 years," I continued calmly, "my husband built a secret life with another woman, funded through hidden accounts, hidden behind careful lies I trusted completely because I believed in the man I married. Tonight, this company is celebrating him for trust and integrity. I simply believe everyone deserves the full truth before deciding whether that celebration is deserved." I turned to Michael directly. "You thank me for my trust and support tonight," I said quietly. "So here it is, one final time, the truth, given freely in front of everyone whose opinion matters most to you." I placed the microphone back on its stand, picked up my small clutch bag, and walked calmly off that stage, leaving behind a silence so complete that even the soft background music seemed to hold its breath. Michael didn't chase after me. He couldn't, because for the first time in 3 years there was no script left for him to perform. News of what happened at the gala spread through Michael's professional circle almost immediately. By the next morning, colleagues were quietly discussing it in hushed conversations. Clients who had trusted Michael with significant financial decisions began questioning whether that same trust had been misplaced in other areas of his life as well. Michael's firm, deeply concerned about their public image following such a public reveal at their own award ceremony, quietly opened an internal review of his conduct. Though the affair itself wasn't a fireable offense on its own, the discovery of hidden accounts and questionable financial handling, details that came up naturally once people started asking questions, became something the firm couldn't simply ignore. Within 2 months, Michael resigned from his position, citing personal reasons, though everyone who had attended that gala understood exactly what those reasons actually were. Michael's parents struggled deeply with what they had witnessed. His mother called me several times in the weeks following the gala, torn between her love for her son and her disappointment in the choices he had made. "I raised him better than this," she told me once, her voice breaking. "I don't know how to reconcile the son I thought I knew with the man you described that night." I told her gently that I didn't need her to choose sides. I simply needed the truth to exist clearly, for my own sake, regardless of how anyone else processed it afterward. Michael tried in the weeks following the gala to reach out repeatedly, calls, messages, even showing up at my sister's house once, hoping to speak with me privately. His messages ranged from angry accusations about how I had destroyed his career unnecessarily to desperate pleas asking for one more chance to explain everything properly. But here's something I understood clearly by then. Michael wasn't upset that he had betrayed me for 3 years. He was upset that his careful system of deception had finally collapsed publicly, in front of the very people whose respect he valued more than almost anything else in his life. I filed for divorce 3 weeks after the gala. Michael, facing mounting financial complications from his resignation and the public unraveling of his reputation, didn't contest the proceedings extensively. The divorce was finalized within 6 months, cleaner and faster than either of us likely expected going in. Denise, I later learned through mutual acquaintances, ended her relationship with Michael almost immediately after the gala. Once she understood the full scope of how deeply she too had been misled about the true state of his marriage. Michael, it seemed, had lost almost everything within a matter of months. His career, his marriage, his family's unquestioning trust, and the relationship he had risked everything to build in secret. All because he believed, for 3 confident years, that I would never find out the truth. Divorce is difficult under any circumstances, but there's a particular kind of difficulty in rebuilding your life after discovering that years of memories you once considered solid were actually built on a foundation riddled with lies. I moved into a new apartment 4 months after the gala, deliberately choosing a space entirely different from the home Michael and I had shared, brighter, smaller, filled with furniture I chose entirely on my own, without needing anyone else's approval or input. Rachel, the friend who had helped me uncover the truth, became one of the most important people in my life during that period. We spent countless evenings together, not just processing what had happened, but rebuilding my confidence in my own judgment, my own instincts, my own ability to trust myself again after feeling so thoroughly deceived by someone I had trusted completely. I reconnected with my own career ambitions during that time as well. I had quietly stepped back from certain opportunities over the years, prioritizing Michael's demanding travel schedule and social obligations. With that pressure gone, I found myself saying yes to projects I had previously turned down, discovering a version of my professional life that felt entirely my own for the first time in years. About 8 months after the divorce was finalized, I ran into a former colleague of Michael's at an industry networking event I attended for my own career. She approached me carefully and said, "I just wanted to say what you did at that gala took real courage. A lot of us had started noticing small inconsistencies for a while, but nobody wanted to say anything. You gave people permission to stop pretending they hadn't noticed." I thanked her, though internally I understood the deeper truth of what she was describing. Betrayal like Michael's rarely exists in complete isolation. There are almost always small signs, small inconsistencies, small moments where the people around a situation sense something isn't quite right, but choose silence because confrontation feels too uncomfortable, too disruptive, too complicated. I had simply decided I was done choosing comfortable silence over difficult truth. People often ask me when I share this story whether I regret waiting so long to confront Michael after I first discovered the truth. My answer is always the same: I don't regret a single day of that waiting period, because that patience is exactly what allowed me to move from a position of confusion and hurt into a position of clarity and control. If I had confronted Michael the night I found that receipt in his jacket pocket, I would have had nothing but suspicion and a single piece of paper. He would have denied everything convincingly, and I likely would have believed him at least partially, because that's what 17 years of trust does to a person's judgment. Instead, by choosing patience, I gathered undeniable proof. I understood the full scope of what I was actually dealing with. And most importantly, I gave myself time to process my emotions privately, so that when the moment finally came to reveal everything, I could do so with calm clarity instead of raw, reactive anger. There's a difference between revenge born from anger and truth delivered with intention. Anger clouds judgment. It makes people say things they don't fully mean, take actions they later regret, hand the other person ammunition to paint themselves as the victim of an emotional overreaction. What I did at that gala wasn't born from anger, even though anger was absolutely present underneath everything I felt. It was born from clarity, a clear, calm decision that the truth deserved to exist in the same public space where Michael had built his entire false reputation. Michael thought his careful system of lies made him untouchable. What he never understood was that the very patience and trust he relied on to keep his secret safe for 3 years was the exact same patience I eventually used to expose it completely, undeniably, and permanently. If there's one thing I hope anyone listening takes away from my story, it's this. The people who betray us often underestimate exactly how much strength quiet, patient people actually carry. Michael believed for 3 years that my trust made me predictable, that my love made me blind, that my patience meant I would never notice, never question, never uncover the truth he worked so carefully to hide. He was wrong on every count. My trust wasn't blindness. It was simply patience waiting for the right information to arrive. To anyone listening who suspects something isn't right in their own relationship, trust those small inconsistencies you notice, even when you desperately want to explain them away. A receipt that doesn't match a story, a phone that stays a little too close, a shower taken a little too quickly after arriving home. These details rarely mean nothing. And if you ever find yourself holding proof of a truth large enough to change your entire life, remember this. You don't owe anyone a quiet, comfortable ending to their lies. You get to choose how, when, and where the truth is finally spoken. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't rage or immediate confrontation. It's patience, careful preparation, and a calm, undeniable reveal delivered exactly when it matters most. I don't hate Michael anymore. I've come to understand that some people build their entire identity on being seen a certain way by others, without ever doing the internal work required to actually become that person. Michael wanted to be seen as trustworthy without ever committing to the difficult, consistent choices that real trustworthiness requires. What I carry forward instead is a quiet confidence in my own judgment, the understanding that even when someone works incredibly hard to deceive you, patience and clear thinking will almost always lead you to the truth eventually. If this story resonated with you, remember betrayal often hides behind confidence and charm. But confidence built on lies is fragile, no matter how convincing it seems. The truth, given enough time and attention, almost always finds its way to the surface. The only real question is whether you'll have the patience to wait for it and the courage to act once it finally arrives. Thank you for listening to this story. If it moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and stay with us for more true stories of betrayal, patience, and the quiet strength it takes to finally reveal the truth on your own terms.